June 13th, 1944, Normandy, France. A single German tank commander spots a long column of the British vehicles rolling through the village of Villers-Bocage, completely unaware that the enemy armor is nearby. In about 15 minutes, that one Tiger tears through the column, knocking out tank after tank, half-tracks and support vehicles. The name of the commander is Michael Wittmann. His daring solo attack becomes an instant legend. German propaganda turns him into a national hero overnight. Books, documentaries and video games still see the Tiger as unbeatable king of the battlefield. But here's the question worth asking. Was Tiger really that dominant? Or did one incredible moment hide a much more complicated story? Today we are going to start with that famous attack, but we are going to peel all the layers, from the hype, engineering, into the harsh realities on the battlefield. By the end you will see why Tiger became a legend and why that legend couldn't save Germany. Let's begin at the moment when everything changed. Picture this, early in the morning, the British troops from the famous 7th Brigade, or so-called the Desert Rats, are pushing forward after the D-Day. They think the path ahead is clear. Wittmann, already a decorated ace from the Eastern Front, is positioned on a ridge with just a handful of Tigers. He doesn't need to wait for orders, he just sees the opportunity and seizes it. He charges straight into the British column. His powerful 80mm gun fires again and again. Within minutes, he destroys several Sherman tanks, Stuart light tank, half-tracks and anti-tank guns. Chaos erupts, the British column is shattered. It was an incredible display of skill, raw power and boldness. Wittmann's crew became an overnight celebrity. This single action cemented Tiger's reputation as being sort of a monster on the battlefield that no allied tank could face head-on. But here's where the story starts to shift, because just one brilliant ambush doesn't tell you the whole stuff about this particular vehicle or the war. To understand why Tiger became so feared, we need to go back a few years before Normandy and before Wittmann's fame to see how Germany even ended up building this beast. At the start of the war in 1939, German armored forces were built for speed and numbers and not the raw power. The light Panzer I and Panzer II were specifically built for blitzkrieg, quick strikes, flanking maneuvers, being overwhelming small forces. The Panzer III and IV quickly became the backbone. Mobility was king. German doctrine emphasized fast advances, combined arms and using anti-tank guns alongside the tank. But by 1940 and 1941, first in North Africa, later in the massive invasion of the Soviet Union, cracks appeared. German tanks started running into much better armored enemies, like the British Matilda or the Soviet T-34 and KV-1. In direct combat, the old panzers struggled. German commanders improvised brilliantly. They pushed anti-tank guns alongside the tank and even repurposed the famous 88mm anti-aircraft gun as a devastating anti-tank weapon. It could punch through a thick armor at long range. That success planted an idea. What if we build a tank around that same 88mm gun and protect it with armor that nearly nothing could penetrate shooting from the front? The concept of a heavy tank, which Germans sketched only vaguely before the war, suddenly became urgent. In May 1941, just before the invasion of Russia, serious development began. The goal was clear: 100mm thick armor at the front, an 88mm gun that could destroy targets at the range of 1000 meters, and the ability to dominate long-range combat. Two companies competed, Porsche and Henschel. Hitler, who loved the new big technology project, got involved personally. After testing, Herschel's design won. The result was Tiger I. It rolled out in 1942, heavy, imposing with that legendary gun, and excellent optics for accurate shooting. On paper it looked unstoppable. German engineers calculated that at 1000 meters, the Tiger had nearly 100% of hitting a target the size of a tank with the first shot. The flat trajectory of the 88mm gun and its penetration power made it deadly. Allied tests later suggested that it took around 1.6 hits on average to knock out an American Sherman from the front. Meanwhile, the frontal armor of Tiger was nearly untouchable for the Allied tanks at the range of beyond 1000 meters. In perfect conditions, such as fields and long sightlines, meant that the Tiger was shooting first. A T-34 or a Sherman advancing across a wide plain stood nearly no chance in a straight duel. That combination of gun and armor created a myth, but war is never perfect. The Tiger's combat debut came in 1942 near Leningrad. It was rushed to the front, and the results were disappointing. The terrain was swampy and forested, which was pretty terrible for a 57-ton tank. Mechanical problems appeared immediately. Several Tigers broke down or were lost to the Soviet artillery guns before they could shine. A few months later, in Tunisia, North Africa, the story was mixed. In the right, open terrain, Tigers did perform well, but in hilly and close-quarter fighting, enemies could flank them. Silent rear armor was much thinner, and once enemy got closer, even the light tanks could cause vast damage. By 1943, in the vast steppes of the Eastern Front, the Tiger finally showed its full potential. Average engagement distances were often between 1700 to 2000 meters, exactly where the Tiger excelled. Skilled crews racked up an impressive kill count. The best Tiger commanders on the Eastern Front claimed over 1,000 vehicles destroyed between them. Overall kill ratios for Tigers were estimated at around 5 to 1, or even better in some units. That's the statistics that still gets repeated today. But even these numbers need context. They came mostly from the favorable conditions early on, and they don't count the Tigers lost to breakdown, fuel shortages, or mechanical failures before even hitting the battlefield. Here's a part that can change your view about Tiger. Producing just one Tiger took an enormous amount of resources, roughly 300,000 man-hours in some estimate, compared to 5 to 10,000 hours for T-34. Germany built around only 1,347 Tigers during the entire war. In the best months, maybe 100 per month or so. Compare that to the Soviets churning out monthly thousands of T-34s, or America producing Shermans at the pace of hundreds per month. The Tiger was also a maintenance nightmare. It was heavy, fuel-hungry, and mechanically temperamental, especially the transmissions and track. Towing a broken Tiger often required another Tiger, which risked damaging that one too. Spare parts were scarce. In Normandy in 1944, many Tigers were abandoned or destroyed by their own crew, not because they were knocked out in battle, but because they broke down and couldn't be repaired or recovered. By 1944, the battlefield was changing fast. The distances in Normandy's hedgerow country were short. Allies had better anti-tank weapons, including the British Sherman Firefly with its 17-pounder gun, and the American tank destroyers like the M18 Hellcat. Air power and artillery pounded German supply line. The window of overwhelming advantage has closed. Even the famous Villers-Bocage triumph wasn't as much of an epic triumph as it's being portrayed. Wittmann's bold attack caused real panic, but the full battle involved way more German tanks, and the British eventually pushed back. Even Wittmann himself later that day needed to abandon his Tiger due to a mechanical failure. He was killed 2 months later in 1944, most likely by a Sherman Firefly hitting his tank from the side. Germany tried to top Tiger I with even heavier Tiger II, so-called the King Tiger. It had sloped armor, the refined 88mm gun, and some incredible protection. But it was even more expensive, heavier and slower in production, also way more harder to maintain. Only around 500 were built. In the Battle of the Bulge, that December, massed German heavy tanks ran into the same problems again. Terrible logistics, fuel shortages, narrow roads, mechanical breakdown, and constant Allied air attacks. Many were abandoned without even firing a single shot. When you zoom out, the numbers tell a sobering story. While elite Tiger crews achieved some impressive kill ratios, the overall strategic impact was limited. Germany simply couldn't produce enough of them to turn the tide against the combined industrial might of the Allied and Soviet forces. The Tiger wasn't a failure as a fighting machine. In the right hands and on the right ground at the right distance, it was one of the most formidable tanks on the war. But it was never the war-winning super weapon that the legends claimed. It symbolized Germans' late war approach, betting on smaller numbers of increasingly complex, high-quality weapons to compensate for overwhelming enemy numbers. That gamble bought time and created some incredible story, but it couldn't overcome the deeper problems of resources, logistics, and production capacity. In the end, the Tiger's greatest legacy isn't just its thick armor or the firepower. It's a reminder that even the most impressive individual weapon can only do so much when the bigger picture, strategy, industry, and sustainment is working against you. What do you think? Was the Tiger overrated, or does it still deserve its fearsome reputation? But for now, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.